We're systematically replacing underperforming schools with academies, with leaders who have high expectations, who have a great deal more freedom in managing their schools and don't accept an excuses culture, which has been the root of the failure of the past.
Thank you both very much. Thanks. Now, what is a child entitled to expect of a world controlled by adults? There's a UN convention, of course, but as the news tells us every day, it means nothing in many places. The children's author, Michael Morpurgo, whose books sell all over the world, is addressing the issue in this year's Dimbleby Lecture. He decided to visit Israel and Gaza, the setting for his book, The Kites Are Flying, on a trip organised and filmed by Save the Children. Before we talk, here's his personal account of what he found.
A couple of years ago, I wrote a story about a journalist called Max. Max makes a film about the wall that divides Palestinians and Israelis, about a young boy on the Palestinian side and a girl on the Israeli side. They become friends through flying kites. To them, the wall is no barrier. Max sees anger and despair all around, but in the children, the beginnings of hope and forgiveness. I was brought here to Israel first and then to Gaza as an ambassador of Save the Children to see the work they do and to find out on the ground whether or not the children on both sides see a chance for peace or whether my book was sentimental nonsense.
Lincoln.
He knows his history, this man. And who was the black man who came along and changed things as well?
Obama.
No, before Obama. Martin Luther King. And from time I've come to Neve Shalom, or Wakata Salam, a cooperative village school, bilingual, binational, the first in Israel. Here, Arab and Jewish children play and learn together. I'm like Max in my own story. I want to know what both communities think and feel about one another. Okay, so you come to this school, and there are Arabic children here. Did you find it quite easy to begin to play with them, just as easy?
Yes, it was easy, but it takes some time.
It takes some time?
Yeah.
Okay.
When one kid said to another kid, Arab, then it's like a curse. It was like a curse. I tell them it's not a curse.
If you watch the news in the TV, they say just bad.
You hear the bad stories?
Like bad stories and not good stories.
Max witnesses the moment when the kites fly up over the wall. Kites of peace. A new beginning, maybe. A first step. So here we are, making kites together. Blue and pink. It's perfect. All I'm sure about is that the more schools there are like this, the more children meet and talk when they are young, the greater the chance of understanding and reconciliation. Sadly, when they are 12, the children are sent off to separate schools. There can be no kite flying together after that. On the Israeli side of the Gaza border is the town of Sderot. Gazan rockets fly here, not kites. And the children who live here live under constant threat of attack. In response, in December 2008, Israel launched Operation Cast Lead. Israelis and roughly 1,300 Palestinians died. But the rocket attacks continue. At the border, the Israeli guards do not allow my Save the Children companion to cross. No reason given. Gaza's coast is patrolled by the Israeli Navy, and by land it is surrounded by a great wall with watchtowers at regular intervals. Gaza, run by Hamas, exists in a state of war with Israel. To stop weapons from getting in, Israel enforces a strict blockade. To me, it looks like a siege. The economy of Gaza has collapsed. Levels of poverty, malnutrition and unemployment are appalling. I visit the Ard El Ensan hospital supported by Save the Children. The Israelis say they allow essential supplies through, but still this is a centre for malnutrition. I am able to talk freely with the mothers and the doctors.
We are fighting anemia, we are fighting rickets, we are fighting malnutrition.
At the Tamer School in Gaza City, it is only too clear that the children remember vividly what happened when the Israelis attacked. They saw relatives die. They cowered in their houses. They hate what the Israeli soldiers have done. This will be the real test. What do the children of Gaza feel about peace? What do you feel about Israeli children?
It's the Israelis who are doing the blockade. They want rights for their children, but they don't want Palestinian children to have rights.
If you had Israeli children here and Palestinian children here, do you think you could talk to them?
Maybe one day one of them will grow up and become a government minister and lift the blockade. Maybe one of them will feel sorry for us.
Is there any other way of achieving freedom other than fighting for it?
There are people who pressure us. They want to take what we have by force. So we must try as hard as we can to get back our lands by blood.
No room for wishful thinking or sentimentality here.
My auntie, my uncle and my cousin were martyred. They lay there for 5 hours, shot in the street. My uncle was not dead. He was bleeding. He was shouting, "Somebody come and help me. Somebody help me." My other uncle is a doctor. He went down to help him and was hit by a rocket. He lay bleeding through dawn prayers and was martyred afterwards.
It's difficult to know how to respond because I can't imagine what he's seen. There is deep resentment and anger. But I sense a willingness not to condemn Israeli children. Maybe it is a beginning. They want peace, but they do want freedom more, and they'll fight for it. These kites will not be flying over the wall for a while, maybe. But one day, perhaps. Leaving Gaza, I feel like a deserter, turning my back on all the suffering and despair. The Israeli military have destroyed all that was here. The only work for the Palestinian kids is to collect the rubble. They'll sell it in Gaza City to be recycled into concrete blocks. While I'm waiting to leave, I hear shots. And out there on the wasteland, I hear screaming and shouting. Moments later, a donkey cart comes rushing by, a young kid lying bleeding in the back of it. I've never seen anyone shot before. A doctor from Médecins Sans Frontières tells me the Israelis use remote-controlled guns operated from miles away. It's difficult for me to confirm this has happened here, but the doctor says it happens a lot. Sometimes children are maimed for life. The UN says guns fire on people who approach restricted areas, but a commander has to give an order first. Within minutes, the children are out there again on their donkeys and carts, back to their scavenging, their way of cocking a snook. So what have I learned? That there is certainly little apparent room or reason for compromise. The wounds are too raw, still bleeding. But I do feel that the seeds of forgiveness and understanding are there in the children of both sides. That one day these children, or their children, will make a peace. They did it in Europe after the Second World War. They did it in South Africa. They did it in Ireland. The kites will fly.
Well, we did ask the Israeli army why it uses remote-controlled guns on the Gaza border. It told us there's been an increasing number of attacks in the area near the fence, including one last May with children using a cart loaded with explosives. Well, I'm joined now by Michael Morpurgo, who made that film, and by Louise Ellman, who's the Vice Chair of the all-party Britain-Israel group in Parliament. Apart from the political solution, which seems to evade everyone at present, what single thing would most improve the lives of these children?
Well, I think it's meeting other children, to be honest with you. And the hope I found in Israel was that when they have the opportunity to talk, things will happen. So it seems to me almost the most important thing that could cross over through that tunnel and through the Israeli wall are Palestinian children, Gaza children, to talk to Israeli children, and those to come in as well. Because what you've got to have in the end is a meeting of minds. I know it sounds, I think we're at the bottom of a terrible place in Israel and Palestine, but hope has to start somewhere, and it will start with the children. It is starting with the children.
It's a terribly depressing situation, isn't it?
It is very depressing, and certainly the children are the victims of a dreadful war. But I don't think it's possible to understand what's happening here, as very tragic as it is, without understanding too that the problem is Hamas, who use these children as human shields, who give the children explosives or sometimes force them to have explosive belts and send them to blow up Israeli civilians. Hamas do have a terrible responsibility for this very, very dreadful situation, and that really does have to be faced up to.
And as far as the siege that the Israelis are imposing upon this community?
Well, the siege is about trying to prevent weapons going from Gaza to blow Israeli children up. All of this is a dreadful situation. Situations like this don't exist on the West Bank, where Hamas are not ruling the situation, and where the Palestinian Authority are in charge. There it's very different. And while we stress the human tragedy, and that's what must affect all of us, that can't be separated from the situation.
That is
in
the
which
worry
those
about
children are
your
acting.
piece, that you were had really. I mean, you didn't go to Sderot, the place where most of the rockets fall from Gaza, and see the terrified children there.
No, but I talked to Israeli children who know all about that, and to Israelis who know it all too well. I think the truth is that you cannot wage war on children. I mean, in the last incursion, 347 children died. Now, every time that happens within a family, you're not solving the situation. All you're doing is creating hatred for the next generation.
The Israelis aren't going in there to kill children.
But it happens.
Yes,
but it happens. And that's the problem. It's not that they are targeted, it's simply that it's collateral damage. But that doesn't make it any better. And what it does is to create this cycle of hatred. You've got to stop the cycle of resentment, the cycle of hatred, and begin to create trust. And that's not going to happen by targeting children. I mean, there were 26 children shot like that in 2010, 26 of them, according to UNICEF.
There is a dreadful cycle there, but the responsibility for that is with Hamas. It is Hamas who arms those children, who teaches them hate, who uses them as human shields. And we've concentrated on the tragedy of the children of Gaza, and that is truly dreadful. There are equivalent tragedies of the children of Israel who've been affected by suicide bombers, some of whom have come from Gaza. It's a tragedy for everyone, and it will only be resolved when Hamas stop their
It just seems so
and
short-sighted to
agreement.
to saying it's all Hamas's fault, it's all the Israelis' fault. I mean, and not to be doing something constructive along the lines that Michael Morpurgo is just to break down misunderstanding, is to recognise that there are human beings here involved.
It is about human beings, and if those human beings can meet, perhaps they can get some understanding, but they can't get it.
How can they meet when you put up a barrier of the kind that the Israelis have put up?
Well, how can they meet, and how can we be without a barrier when Hamas are sending those very children with their explosive belts across to kill Israeli children and Israeli civilians? All of that has to stop, and nobody is entirely innocent.
We didn't get a whisper of children with explosive belts on them in your piece.
No, I didn't meet any children with explosive belts. You know, there's a lot of talk going on here.
But that indeed has happened, and that's why people have been blown up. You know, it would have been nice too if we'd been able to see in Michael's really very important piece there. children from Gaza being treated in Ashkelon by Israelis, Gaza children who are ill, being given good medical treatment
yes,
there.
I saw them waiting to come out.
And that is a good